The topic today is really, really interesting. It divides opinions. A lot of people are either on one side of the fence or on the other side of the fence. So it will be a very interesting conversation.
Yes, agreed.
So let me just start by introducing my guest. So my guest for this first episode today is Macushla Collins. With a background in communications, marketing, and business development gained through her own businesses and working in professional services firms, Macushla has a deep appreciation of messages' power to win business and win over employees. After working for 2 decades with technical professionals ranging from accountants, scientists, engineers, economists, and academics, Macushla realized that they often find it difficult to articulate what they want to say in ways that make sense to their audience. This compelled her to formulate an approach that helps business leaders, employees, and owners, managers assemble their own communication toolkit. She operates at the intersection between the technical, business development, and marketing. Macushla has created digital products that encourage intelligent, integrated communication at a personal, professional, and organizational level. She's currently a business development role in the construction industry here in Brisbane. I met Macushla at a business function, I would say about a year ago, and I was really impressed by the way she expresses her thoughts with business leaders and actually influence the conversation. So definitely really appreciate Makushla's presence here today. So Macushla, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jay. I really appreciate being here, and especially being the first one. It's very exciting.
It is always an early morning. So thank you for being here. I hope you've had your first coffee, your first cup of tea.
But better earlier in the morning than later in the day for me, I
All
think.
right. That's good. That's good.
And I'm
Yeah,
fresh.
for me as well. I'm an early riser.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yes. Tell us a bit about well, I've introduced yourself, and obviously you've got a lot of experience in that communication space. And for me, really, the today the topic we will discuss is the hybrid model. I will introduce the topic in a few minutes, but the hybrid model of work, which is really a bit of a spin-off of COVID-19. You know, like all major events, they come with positives and negatives. I think one of those that came out of COVID-19 is the new ways of working. So, as I said before, it divides opinions of people. Employees really love it. Some of them really love it. Some of them have gone full circle and said, "Well, I've tried it, tested it. It's not for me." Organizations, on the other hand, is a mixed bag. So, what's been your experience really with this new approach to working?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Jay. Look, obviously COVID was a big factor in people working from home. I think prior to that, the figures are pretty low. I know you'll delve into the report that that you shared with me from
Yes.
Harvard, but so it was
McKinsey & Co. Yes.
McKinsey.
Yes. I
Yes,
will
yes.
share the report. I will share the report.
Share the report shortly. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, prior to that, I had been working as an independent consultant, freelancing, and working from home for quite a long time. Actually, about 7 years. And by the end of COVID, and I was happy to do that. I'd been in as you pointed out in my bio, I'd worked in consulting firms, and obviously that was at that stage very much a go into the office arrangement. When I had the opportunity to step away from that, and it suited me because of my family commitments, I was really happy to be working from home. It just gave me so much flexibility around. And I was working for myself. I guess that was the other difference. I wasn't actually working for another organization. I had clients, and so where I chose to work was up to me. And I was grateful for that opportunity because it allowed me to do the work that I needed to do. And I really did strive to quarantine my work to days, not have it kind of bleed into evenings or not too much into weekends. I think when you're running your own business, there's always that challenge. There's always something to do. It's a bit like studying.
Yes, yeah, that's
There's
right.
always something else to do.
Yeah.
And um, and it worked very well for me. However, I found after, quite a few years, as I said, about 7 years, and then after COVID and significant lockdowns, I found that, um, I just really wanted to have some personal contact. And this was from somebody who had said, oh, I don't think I'll ever go into an office again. So I just think that it's very easy to say, oh, look, it's going to, work from home is a panacea. It's going to solve all problems for you personally, and perhaps even for a business, think that it's going to solve all problems, or meet all needs. I don't think it can be all one thing or all the other. I think you've got to strike that balance. So for me personally, it worked for a period of time and it suited my needs. And as life changes and you go through different stages, you have different needs. And
That's right.
so there was a need to go back into an office arrangement. And I think from time to time, you just, each person needs to reflect on their own situation
Yep.
and professional goals
Yep.
and yeah, personal commitments, and make a decision and seek out a role or a place for themselves that meets those needs.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like many things, like you said, and I think balance is the right word. It's really about an understanding, sort of, like, what works, what doesn't work. And so today I will try to look at it through the lens of the individual, but also through the lens of the organization,
Yeah.
um, and try and sort of figure out what's going on really.
Yeah.
Um, the inspiration for I'm going to share the report, or at least the cover sheet of the report. Um,
Yeah.
it's really the inspiration behind talking about this topic is from me came when I read this the State of the Organization's 2023 report. I did participate in the survey a
Mm.
couple of years ago, really, when McKinsey and Co. approached around 2,500 business leaders, CEOs, MDs, GMs around the world. Um, to try and understand, as we come out of COVID-19, what really will be the state of the organizations.
Mm.
And it's for me, it's really an interesting report to look at. I'm not going to delve into the details of it as such. So what I've decided is every episode of the podcast, I will talk about one of those, what they call big shifts. So they
Mm.
came up with 10 most significant shifts that are going to face the organizations. CEOs and GMs and business leaders are grappling with those important topics as we speak.
Mm.
So today, the one that we will delve in is this true hybrid, the new balance of in-person and remote work.
Mm.
So that's really what I wanted to share with you. I'm going to stop sharing this report so we can get back on the screen. So prior to you mentioned that in your introduction, prior to COVID-19, 80% of employees thought that some way or the other, they will need to have some presence in the office.
Yeah.
Couple of months, I would say 1 year later after COVID, this statistic has shifted completely on its head. Now,
Yes.
90% of people are saying that um, hybrid model um, is the way forward. It's here to
Mm.
stay. And when you really look at it, it's 90% of people, yes, but there's 10% of the others. Well, the 10% of the others could be in a situation where they don't have any choice anyway. They could be
Correct.
working in a role like, for example, in the construction industry, where you can't be working remotely. You can't work remotely in some areas of government. Like I was thinking of it yesterday, like police, the ambulance service, emergency management,
Yeah.
you name it. So there are roles, and even in retail, where you have a face-to-face component. There are roles that could be of those 10%. So which really means the real statistic there is 100% or close to 100% of people who can work hybrid would say hybrid is the way forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is hybrid here to stay? That's my first question.
Look, I think it probably is here to stay. I think the composition of it will probably change, but I do think it's probably here to stay.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think if you're looking at it from an individual level, I think enough people have had a taste of it and
yeah,
gained something from it that they probably want to continue with it. That
yeah,
would be one thing. And I think from an organizational perspective, and I know that we'll touch on this, is that uh, for attraction and retention of people, and being able to go out to a wider pool of talent, that the organizations are going to be looking at ways to bring people in. And
yeah.
if there's an expectation, as a baseline expectation for people, that they are able to work from home,
That's
um,
right.
they yeah, if it doesn't meet their needs, then
Yeah.
they're not going to apply for the role, are they?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed in my practice is, when you advertise for a role or you attract talent through say any sort of portal, LinkedIn, you name it,
Mm.
as soon as you put the role being able to work remotely, the amount of applicants just shoots up, and when you talk to people as well, you realize that it's really some form of intangible benefit that they are looking
Yes.
for.
Yeah.
I wonder if it will become part and parcel of compensation and benefits that organizations will have to think about when they are attracting talent. So, you know what I mean, right?
Oh,
Like,
I do. Oh, 100% do. And I think particularly in, say, I mean, there are some roles within construction that there's obviously office-based roles within construction.
sure,
And yeah, people will they will definitely be looking to where they can gain have that kind of benefit in place, because it will hold more appeal for them.
yeah,
It definitely is a factor.
yeah. And to me, there are two really angles to this debate, if we can call it a debate. It's really the talent angle, the talent acquisition angle, and which I have been experience. I've been sort of at the coal face
Mm.
of conversations regarding hybrid versus non-hybrid. I've had situations in the past couple of months where um, people are resigning, moving away from jobs just because they can't work in the office. Sorry, they can't work from home. They want to work
Yeah.
in a hybrid environment, and that is no more the case with the organization, and they just pull the pin, and so on. So the talent angle is really an important one here. The other angle is communications, and really, I think you have a huge amount of experience in that space because when people, the first thing I ask people who are in a way against the idea of a purely hybrid model, they would say to me something like, well, we can't have people in the office, so we don't have this face-to-face presence. So we're losing this um,
The
co like
connectivity.
the connectivity and they call it the coffee conversations, you
Yeah,
know?
the coffee conversations,
Yeah,
I think the word term was the water cooler
that's
conversations,
right.
or
Yeah,
in the hallway.
yeah,
Um, I do feel that there is. I don't think we should disregard that argument, because it definitely is a factor. And I think even if you do have a lot of people in an office, often communication is not great. So,
yeah,
and this in spite of the fact that we have more technology, more platforms available to us than we've ever had. So,
yeah,
yeah, I think it's definitely something to be mindful of. There is something in that, um, you know, face-to-face connection that you get with people. I work in business development and obviously in marketing and in communication. So it's very much about having connection with people. And it's not just the most success that I you would experience, whether it's with a colleague or in when you're trying to engage with a client, is by is really with a face-to-face conversation. Obviously, there's email, there's messaging, and there's getting on the phone,
Yeah.
and probably the phone is the best out of those three, and then
Yeah.
obviously that a face-to-face conversation. And I'm sure that you would probably,
Yeah,
well, agree with that. Just in
absolutely.
when you're looking for people for roles to suit an organization, there's just something about being able to, I don't know, it's the face-to-face thing. I don't think it's replaceable. Um, that's probably why a hybrid model of, two days at home or 3 days at home and then 2 in the office probably works well for people, because it allows them to have that time to do what you would expect is focused, productive work, as opposed to being in an office where there can be multiple distractions, but also the benefit of having that face-to-face
Yeah.
conversation. But then, having the time out allows you to knuckle down and get work
Get
done.
get things done. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of zone in into some of the benefits and probably look at the angle of the talent management and the attraction and retention part. Um, so from your perspective, what are the benefits of the hybrid of the true hybrid model if we assuming we get the balance right?
Yeah.
And yeah, what have your experience been around that?
Yeah, I think the benefits are, well, one of them is I've already mentioned, is that ability to be able to focus and do productive work. I'm a big fan of, anyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of Cal Newport and his work. He published a book called Deep Work. He's recently released another book called Slow Productivity, and those his work really speaks to me, because I think if you need to create something or produce something, it's not possible to do that with multiple distractions. So in a quiet, well, presumably quiet working environment, if you've got an office set up at home, a working area set up at home, that allows you to do that. That actually, the production of of work is what you're engaged to do.
Yeah,
So being able to demonstrate that you've produced something, I think, as a result of being able to work quietly or work productively, I think that's key, and it's essential for a business, because there can be a lot of time that's wasted in an office environment with lots of interruptions and people chatting, noise, meetings, that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, there are definitely benefits to having that quiet,
from a
having that.
productivity point of view.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And look, and I know there are definitely offices that are set up with breakout rooms and that kind of thing, and that also works really well,
yeah,
provided there are enough of them and that people are using them.
yeah.
So
In fact, it offers. I would say when I was looking into it a bit more deep, and I have had a few contacts, few previous companies that I've been dealing with where they have used this as a real positive from a productivity point of view, not so much on the individual level. Obviously, it improves individual level productivity, but organizational productivity.
yeah,
I experienced a case where a company set up through hybrid model 3 different teams in 3 different time zones. Um, and when you think about it, you've got one team in one part of the world and the other team in another part of the world, and they're sort of working together and they pass on the baton after a while, so they can double or triple their productivity uh,
yeah.
by having people working in their own time zone in there because COVID proved that if the work can be done from home, it can be done from anywhere in the world, as long
That's
as
right.
you've
That's
got the
right.
right systems in place.
That was a big thing, wasn't it, for when people were sort of going off and doing their own thing, I guess, in a way that I did. You could literally work from anywhere, and it's true. You have the ability to work from anywhere. Is it the right thing to do? for an individual at all of the time, it may not be, because I know people who've done that and it's not that fulfilling.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not that fulfilling.
yeah,
So I think we have it's wise to be mindful of thinking that something is going to be, all bells and whistles and solve all your problems, when in actual fact it probably won't.
yeah,
So, some maybe 70% of it or 60% of it will, but yeah, they'll, I guess, just doing a reality check
yeah.
on, and I think that's probably where we're at. I think where organizations are at, probably where individuals are at. I know people who have worked from home, have worked remotely, um, and full time, and then realized excuse me, and then realized it wasn't right for them, and that individual being quite an introspective person, and not
Yeah.
sort of, not a gregarious kind of life of the party type
Yeah, yeah,
person.
yeah, yeah.
And so for me, that's quite a good gauge to say, well, even someone who's quite
Introvert.
happy, yeah, quite introverted and quite happy to work on their own,
Yeah.
probably still needs
Struggled with it.
still needs some personal contact with
That's
people.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, human beings
we're
are
human.
social animals, aren't we? So we need
Correct.
to be able to sort of meet each other and talk to each other and have coffee with each other,
Yeah.
and so we shouldn't really undermine or underplay this real important aspect of human relationships. Um, So yeah, definitely. The other aspect, before we move on to some of the issues that we may encounter or
Mhm.
we have encountered with the hybrid model, is definitely the attraction and the retention. I can
Yes.
vouch for that. In this period, 2024 going forward, if you don't, it almost like it's a hygiene factor in every role. That
Yes.
if you don't have it, then you are in a way out of the you sort of you have to compensate the fact that you are expecting someone to be in the office full time by
Yes.
something else, and generally it's by offering more salary or more bonuses or
Yeah.
something that would compensate the fact that people have to be in the office. So
Yeah.
turn around completely, isn't it, since COVID?
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah.
So looking at the other side of the coin, really, so the issues that we must be aware of. So
Mm.
one of them in the report talks about managers being uncomfortable with the idea.
Yeah.
Do you think that some managers have sort of are basically uncomfortable, or saying that, well, I want to see you to know that you're working?
Yeah, look, I think there's definitely an element of that. And I think, again, we're human beings. It's the the relationship needs to be the employer employee relationship, in an ideal world, is based on trust, as is every relationship. And it has to go both ways. So if an employer doesn't trust an employee to do their work um, effectively in a work from home arrangement, then maybe don't go down that road. Like, if you don't feel that you can kind of get beyond that.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, on the other side of things, the employee needs to demonstrate that they are trustworthy and are doing all the right things, meeting all the requirements of their role
Hmm.
within that organization. So
Yeah.
I think there has to be, an openness about it. And I don't know if I'm going ahead too far, but uh, having
No,
things
no,
in
that's absolutely.
having things in place that give comfort or peace of mind, I suppose, to the employer, but also have the expectation on the employee that they
Yeah.
will meet certain
I
criteria.
I
And
think
I
it's
think,
based on trust. Yeah.
yeah, definitely based on trust and honesty, and yeah, I guess doing the right thing.
Yeah, and f- few well-known figures have come out and basically been quite forceful about it and said, well, I want all my employees to be in the office. Elon Musk was one of them. Um, one of the new directors of Manchester United came out and and said that I want everyone to be in the office. So it's almost like it's a knee-jerk reaction to
Yes.
I don't know whether it's lack of trust. You mentioned trust. So it could be lack of trust. It could be underperforming or teams, um, and thinking
Or
that
even underperforming individuals,
underperforming
catering to
individuals.
that lowest common
Yeah.
denominator.
So
So everyone, because, perhaps one person doesn't, then it's kind of like that broad brush across
yes,
everybody.
yes,
And that's probably not fair either, because yeah, not there'll be people who'll be highly productive and will do the right thing every day of the week.
yes,
They shouldn't necessarily, well, they shouldn't be tarnished with the
yeah,
same brush of someone who's not doing
yeah,
the right thing. Yeah.
yeah. So it's almost like when you think about both sides, the positive sides and the not so positive sides or the negative sides, we are kind of in a state of uh, uncertainty. Like it's a bit like an amorphous state where we don't know really. And we will talk about this. I think that's the probably the last part of our podcast is we're going to talk really about, what makes it work. We know that it's here to stay. We know that it's almost like a hygiene factor now. We
Yes.
we 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 we, we cannot foresee the work without a hybrid component to it, as long as you can do it. I mean, I'm discarding those roles that you absolutely cannot do hybrid, like I mentioned. Um, so if you can be in a hybrid environment, I think it has to be considered now as a hygiene part of
Yeah.
the role. So then we will talk a little bit about what makes it work. But before we get into that, I want to highlight the fact that, there's also, you talk about it as well in your introduction, is these lines being blurred between work and life. So when you're working from home, um, when you're in the office, you can log out of your computer, you can, get in your car and commute home. So you're going home.
Yes. Yeah.
And even if you're
There's
stuck in traffic,
that definitely that switch. Yeah.
Yeah, and even when you're going to, I noticed that when people are going to work or coming back from work, it's like creates a distinction in their brain and saying,
Yes.
okay, I'm off now. I'm not going to take any calls. I'm not going to be on emails. Um, and legislatively point of view,
Correct.
if you look at
Hmm.
what happened recently,
Yes.
the right to disconnect had to be implemented because there was no boundaries being
Yes.
created.
Yeah.
So is it really important for people to understand this, and how do they create boundaries in their life when they're working from home? What's your experience with this?
Well, uh, I guess I was very conscious of it when I was working as a consultant. So I had a space that was completely separate. Interestingly, it didn't have a door on that area. It was just a room, and similar to what I have now, and um, with no door on it. But it's very much the office. So
Okay.
don't go in there. You go in there to work. So and for no other reason. It's not where you go for fun, if you like.
So you
And
created a physical space for yourself.
create a physical space, and things, little techniques that I applied, and I guess I would recommend to anyone to go and read Cal Newport's book,
Okay.
Deep Work, because he talks about things like that. Like he talks about time management, and I know there's lots of that's a whole nother debate, I guess, is around time management. I feel that if you're going to work in an office or at home, you need to have those skills to be able to segment and maximize, get the most out of your productive day. And he has a technique that at the end of the day, which I apply, maybe 70% of the time, I could actually do that more, is uh, prepare prepare for the next day, have
Okay.
your next day worked out, and then switch off. And
Um,
there's a whole process that he has, which is more detailed than the way that I've described it, but
yeah.
essentially that's what it is.
Okay.
Finalizing, and it's allowing about half an hour at the end of the day to do that, so that you're setting yourself up for the next day. You've shut off from the previous
Yeah.
day. And
So So you have to make a conscious decision between what is work and what is not work. You cannot let it sort of, you know,
it can't bleed into the other. And look,
exactly.
there are occasions, and hopefully few and far between, where those lines are blurred. Perhaps a situation's arisen or something has to be addressed immediately. I certainly know in in a project world, things like that do happen. So just being, and if companies have got projects where there are night works and that sort of thing, perhaps there is a requirement for certain people to be in contact. But I think if you're just, if your role requires you to be at a desk for most of the time, then probably you have that ability to be able to create that very clear line in the sand between what you're doing in your work during the day and then your life. And his argument was, and I think it's really sound, and I know myself that it's true, is if you don't have that, if you don't create, you actually can be more productive and more creative if you create that, if you have that line in the sand and you allow your brain to, he actually talks about allowing your brain to rest. And so doing something else, it might be not necessarily watching TV, although that can work, watching a movie or something, but generally, if you have a hobby or an interest, or reading, he's a big reader, I'm a reader as well, and so just having other
other
putting
things.
other stuff into your brain and actually into yourself personally, because if you are, we all know that, I mean, there's that, all work no play makes Jack a dull boy, and I think that's, there's some real truth in that, because if we're only working, it's not sustainable for a start, and it's not enjoyable ultimately, and you don't get the best out of yourself and can't give the best to an organization.
Yeah. And the last one that I wanted to talk to about regarding the issues for hybrid model is there's a cost component to it, or an
That's
economics
true.
component, So at least from my side, I've noticed it. I drink a lot of coffees, and when I was working in the office, coffee was provided by the office. So now I've noticed my um, um, uh, the number of coffee jars that I purchase on a monthly basis increases. Not that it makes a big difference, but it's just something that you notice. So I wonder if it's something that some people are considering. I mean, obviously, if you go to the office, there is obviously the cost of commute, the time that you spend
Of
on the
course.
commute
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
big cities. You spend a lot of time on the road. There's a cost component for the employers, because even during COVID, some of the property economists were saying that commercial property is just going to be doom and gloom because no one will be renting
That's
commercial
yeah.
property. But I look at it now, on the M5, on the M1. There's a lot of traffic. The cities have rejuvenated after COVID-19. So there's really been a bit of realization that yes, okay, we can work from home. It's great to work from home, but I think there are some issues that's come up that's made people realize that you talked about the social interaction, yes, but there's also the fact that we do business better by there's this concept of 1 + 1 is not just two, is three. That's
Yes,
that
that's
missing
right.
link, that missing intangible that you need to think about.
Yes, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think too, if we haven't really touched on it much at all, but I think I think there's, keep in mind that whether people are in the office or whether they're working from home or doing both, it's the communication that will connect them, and the quality of that communication. So if people are, I feel that that technology's allowed a casualness to come into communication that, in that isn't aligned to, the professional sphere.
Yes,
And I think we have to be, if an organization is going to go down this pathway, and calling individuals to be accountable themselves for how they communicate, but having a standard in place that, you're not on Facebook in a work environment. You're
that's right.
you're you're in a professional role, and I
Yeah,
guess communicating accordingly is something else to keep in mind. That just because you
yeah,
are working from home, or you know getting onto, if you're going to get onto a meeting, a Zoom call or a Teams call, or whatever it happens to be, being presented like you would be in an office environment, as opposed to
yeah,
I'm at home and I've got my PJs on, and
yeah. And
Haven't
not only that, I think the more technology we've introduced actually hasn't really solved the problem of communication. It's actually
hasn't at all.
made it.
In some ways, it's made it worse.
It's made it worse because now you've got Teams, you've got Slack, you've got Zoom, you've got Messenger, you've got WhatsApp, you've got the phone. So you don't even know where the message is being sent, you know? So
It's so true, and I think that's probably one thing where an organization has to decide, okay, well, this is what we use, and this is
yes,
how this is the expectation. But even I think even in doing that, I still feel that I know myself, you send something via an email, and then somebody will send the response back via Teams, or
yes,
you'll get a text message
yes.
about, it's actually
Yeah.
confusing.
And also to dissociate what is, I suppose, if I can use the term official communication versus not so official communication.
Yeah.
Back in the day, when you received a letter coming
Yes.
from the manager or from the
It
head,
was important.
it's important, and there's something that you need to implement and you need to action. But now, you could. I've heard of so many cases, not that it's the right thing to do, but so many cases where people are being dismissed by text.
Oh, wow, that's no
So
good. Yeah.
yeah, that's that's sort of raises the point. I mean, where is the communication happening? Which is the official one? Which is not so official one? So is it for information? Is it for action? You're not sure, So
Yes, yes. And I think that's probably where organizations can get be a bit preemptive, or if
yes,
or start to really give it some thought about, okay, it is, because it is confusing. And I think our brains are actually not wired
yes,
to have that the constant pings, the constant notifications. I mean, people get frustrated with me because I don't see the notifications because I have them turned off. It's just simply because I feel it's too hard. And that was another technique I kind of picked up from Cal Newport's work, which is, um, you know, and I don't do it anywhere nearly as well as I could. It's something I could certainly develop, is, having set times to look at those things rather than having emails on constantly, or rather than having Teams on constantly. Okay, so between 8 and 9, when I get in, I'm going to do, I'll do a check, I'll do it, or it's at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And if it's really urgent, people, I think, will just get in touch with you. But I
yes,
think to what's our role is really to be productive and to produce and to create.
yes.
Um, a lot of that work is busy work, but it's not productive.
hmm Yeah. Well, uh, the one of the pitfalls of being in the office is the number of meetings we have to attend.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you look at um, the time spent by an individual in the office, 8 hours generally, and maybe some of them are doing 5, 6 hours in meetings. It's unreal, So
Yeah, it is. You absolutely cannot
yeah,
produce your best work in that under those conditions. It's just
yeah,
not. And I think it's interesting that there's research variously different places. And I think if you're a business owner, you would be noticing it as a drop in productivity.
yeah,
And so how if people are if the technology is not supporting it, and if the work arrangements are not supporting it, and if the communication's not supporting it, then it needs a rethink.
that's right.
If productivity is being affected, I
That's
guess
right.
that's what
That's
I'm
right.
trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're coming to close to the end of the
Yeah.
podcast. You've talked about it a bit. So we're coming close to what we call, the balance. So the we know it's here to stay. We know
Mm.
for the roles that can be hybrid, there's no ifs and buts. I think we need to consider it as part and parcel of the requirements for the role,
Mm.
whether to attract good talent for the role or whether to be able to measure productivity and let people run their sort of their day in a productive way for the benefit of the organizations, of course.
Mm.
So in terms of that, there needs to be a balance. You talked about organizations needs to probably set some rules. Let's start with communication. So how can we moving forward establish some rules where people know, okay, this is the way it should be done, and the expected type of communication by the organization in a hybrid environment, yeah, of course.
Yes. Well, I think, well, I think having agreed, agreed behaviors
Okay.
and methods or means of communication. I think a check-in personally, I think that a check-in in the morning and not a check-in, I'm checking on you, are you there, sort of, but just as you would if you were in an office situation, you come into the office, you say good morning to people, how's your day, and then, okay, what's
What's
kind
your
of
plan for the
yeah,
day?
yeah, what's the plan for the day? Like, what do we need to get through today? To
It's
me,
it's
I
it's a
feel
good old huddle. But
it's that's right.
yeah,
It's the huddle, right?
huddle,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
and
in an electronic way,
in an
So
electronic way, and either a phone call or a Teams or Zoom call or something,
yeah,
just to have that point of connection.
yeah,
Of course, throughout the day, if things are urgent, whether it's via text or via a Teams message, going, having those, or whatever method works, but not because the interruptions can be so frequent. I think, yeah, just trying to manage that. And I think if it's probably if it's external communication, it's via email, and yeah, and I think making sure that at the end of the day, there's that other sort of follow, kind of, to
yeah,
back end the day, and just,
yeah.
where do we get to, sort of setting us up for the next day,
That's right.
to
And
make
that's
sure.
the communication piece, but there's the trust piece, the out of sight, out of mind type of scenario. So again,
I think that helps. That approach actually helps with that.
that
It gives the employer that piece of, or the manager, that peace of mind that, okay, I've spoken to the person, and if there's that communication during the day, it's either it's a phone call or, because you're working on things probably together or related. So you, I think that's entirely appropriate,
yeah,
as
and
you
you can
would.
see, and I think if managers are doing what they should be doing, in other words, set the goals, set the objectives, and let the person run the show,
Yes,
you will be able to see the outputs and the productivity coming out of people, even they're working
yes,
from home. You should be able
yes,
to see it, and you
yes. You
should be
should be
able to
able
do
to.
it,
Yeah.
you know. So it's almost like saying you should. And I'm a big fan of that. Is every job should be projectized in a way. It should be, if you're running a job, it should have a set of objectives. It should have a deadline. It should have a budget. It should have a communication strategy. It should have a risk mitigation strategy. It should have a reporting methodology or reporting strategy. So
Yeah.
if you run every single job like that, I don't see why you can't let people work anywhere in the world with technology and use technology appropriately, and measure the outputs of
Yeah.
people, you know. So that to me, that's key. It's how do we, and the report, the McKinsey report, really touched on that as well. It's about how do you create less ambiguity,
Yes.
less volatile and ambiguous situations in the workplace
Mm.
by really setting the scene, making it clear for everyone, and being
Wrapping
transparent.
something around it, putting some
Yeah.
structure, some scaffolding in place
Scaffolding.
that holds it up, and
Yeah.
then it kind of, like, the communication, I think, is like
Yes.
the glue between all the
Yeah.
elements.
And the last thing that they talk about, I don't know if you've experienced a bit of that, is test and learn. It's like, like anything, any new thing in the organization,
Yeah.
just give it a go and then
One of my
measure
yeah,
the
yeah.
outputs.
It's one of my favorite approaches, I guess, is like doing a test and measure. And I
Yes.
think you trial something, and that way you're not hooked into it. You don't have to continue with something. The other person is free to not be, to not do it. So you do a test and measure, and obviously the periodic review. Is it working? Yes, no. If it is, what needs to improve? And if it's not working, what needs to improve? And then
Yes.
you can kind of implement things on a more permanent basis, or not, or decide it's not quite right for us. So yeah, we're not doing it.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you the flexibility and the freedom to go through with it, as opposed to being locked into something and then thinking, I can't get out of this, because and it's not working.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, leadership should retain the ability um, to use it or not to use it, as a
Yes.
as a method of work. So,
Yes.
and if it's working for your organization, by all means, you should continue. But if it's not
Continue.
working and
Yeah.
the culture is not right, because there's a lot to do with culture. Some organizations are not ready for it, and you have some, and unfortunately, groups of people um, um, are running with the idea of hybrid model, and other groups of people are not in the
Yeah.
same organization. So it creates a lot of stress.
It
Uh,
does. It
and,
definitely does. And I think, yes, it's if it's going to be made available to certain people, it should be made available to everybody. And then
and
people,
yeah,
yeah, I think it can definitely cause issues.
and I think HR and the leadership should probably take it seriously in the sense that there should be some policies and procedures.
Yes.
It should be absolutely transparent, clear. Who can work from home, who cannot work from home? When can
Yes.
you work from home, when you can't?
Yeah.
What sort of activities are you expected to be in the office?
Yeah.
For example, if you're doing a team building activity, how can you do that over Slack, over
Yeah,
Zoom?
yeah, you can't.
So, and if you're working in a sort of geographical separation, like you're in overseas, you have no choice, your other choice is to spend money and get on a plane. But if you
Yeah.
don't want to do that, you have to do some form of online type meeting. But if you're in the same city, it's almost like stupidity not being able to meet each other for a brainstorming or
Yes, of
for a
course.
team building.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely test and measure, and if it's working, great, and having boundaries in place, I think it absolutely makes sense, and that way it's very, very clear. It gives it's like with kids, you've got to have clear boundaries for them, and I think I'm not saying that by any means that employees are like children, but about people respond well to boundaries. They know where they stand,
Yes,
and it gives the manager or the organization, the posture to be able to say, well, look, here are the boundaries. And then it gives people the ability to choose whether it's right for them or not as well. So
that's right. That's
yeah,
right.
very, very, very important.
Okay, I think we've gone through this
We've done everything. Yeah.
inside out and also around it. So
Yeah.
nothing much to say except that have you got any few final words on this topic?
Nothing that I don't think we haven't already covered, Jay. I think we've gone through all the key points, I think, and obviously suggest to people that they do some reading themselves,
Yeah.
whether they're a manager or if they're an employee that's looking into it. Definitely, perhaps considering that they want to go to their employer and say, look, this is something I'd like to try. Yeah, do some research to understand what might work for them and what the hurdles might be as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And for me, the final word is really, it's one of the spin-offs of COVID-19. I'm in a way, organizations were forced into.
Yes,
I remember vividly that it came a point where whether we liked it or not, whether we had the systems for it or not, we had
it
to
was
work from.
happening.
It is happening. It's there. We cannot go to work. So
Yeah,
we had to be at home and we had to continue being productive and continue being active at work. So it's here to stay. For me, the final word is let's create the rules around it. Let's make it clear for people in their minds that this is where we can be at home. This is where we cannot be at home. And that way, everybody is certain. It will do a lot for organizations in their ability to attract talent and retain talent,
yeah,
and for employees as well. I think it will open up a new world of opportunities of things that they can do with their time if they can manage it properly. I think
yes,
you touched on
yeah,
that. If you
yeah.
can create those boundaries where work finishes, where life starts,
Mm,
it will be uh, for me it will be a breath of fresh air for everyone.
yeah,
So
good.
thank you so much. I'm putting on the screen here the where this podcast will be broadcasted.
Available.
So this is at my on my YouTube channel. I will also share it with you and your audience on LinkedIn.
Yeah, great. Thank you
Uh,
very much, Jay, for having me on. Really appreciate it.
it's been a pleasure. And we'll catch up soon. We'll have a face-to-face coffee and we'll
Sounds
debrief
good.
and talk about it. But thank you so much, Macushla, and have a good day.
Yes, you too. Thanks, Jay.